Thank you, Mr Acting Deputy President. I'm a big believer in the rule of law, in the notion that we all must be equal before it. And yet we should never forget that when it comes to accountability and integrity, there has been, until now, one set of rules for Labor and the union movement and another set for businesses and the Conservative side of politics. Some union leaders have a head-in-the-sand attitude to union corruption and misuse of members' funds. They seem to think they can spot alleged corruption in businesses at 100 paces, but they refuse to acknowledge when it is rife in the union movement. Now, it was like this under Mr Shorten when he refused to act to expel Mr Setka of the CFMMEU from the Labor Party for his criminal harassment of women and his denigration of the work of Australian of the Year, Ms Batty. It was like this under Julia Gillard, Ms Gillard, who refused to act on Mr Thompson as he faced charges of misappropriation of union funds to attend brothels when he headed the Health Services Union of New South Wales. And sadly, it seems set to continue under our new Leader of the Opposition, Mr Albanese, who has declared today that Labor will not be backing the Ensuring Integrity Bill. Now, we know that there are some unions who are doing what they can to represent their members and provide them with useful services like professional registration or insurances. But the more militant and outlying unions like the CFMMEU thumb their noses at the law. Over recent years, that very union has been fined more than $16 million for not 20, not 200, but 2,000 contraventions of the laws of this country. And that's perfectly fine with the current head of the ACTU, Ms McManus, who is on the record as saying, "I believe in the rule of law when the law is fair and the law is right, but when it's unjust, I just don't think there's a problem with breaking it." With the backing of the ACTU, it's no wonder the CFMMEU has 79 of its representatives before the courts in 37 separate cases brought about by the Australian Building and Construction Commission for 800 separate alleged contraventions of workplace law. To paraphrase the Attorney-General, Labor changes its leader, but nothing changes with Labor. But if the senators opposite won't hold the Labor movement to account, we will. The Ensuring Integrity Bill is designed to ensure that all registered organisations act within the law. Shouldn't be crazy, right? And when they don't, they are penalised. The bill applies equally, very importantly equally, to unions and employer organisations, and it reflects the recommendations of the Trade Unions Royal Commission. It finally brings unions into line with provisions for misappropriation, fraud, misuse of union funds and other so-called white-collar crimes that are listed in the Corporations Act. And really, why should unions, often with their significant managerial structures and their extensive commercial interests and profit margins, be treated differently from the corporations of this country? Schedule 1 of the Act will amend the Fair Work Act of 2009 to ensure that officials who demonstrate disregard for the law won't be able to hold office in a registered organisation. Again, simply applying similar standards to those we already expect from those people who would wish to lead a corporation. If you want to be a company director, you can't break the law. It's not an unreasonable standard. Under the framework of the bill, a person convicted of an offence carrying a penalty of 5 years' imprisonment or more will be automatically ineligible to hold office or disqualified if they already do so. The court will be given more appropriate powers to disqualify officials of registered organisations that breach their duties, that have a history of breaking the law, or who are regarded unfit to hold their office because of it. Now, where an organisation or its officials has failed to live up to the standards of the law, acted in individual self-interest, or failed to comply with court orders, the registration of an organisation may be cancelled or privileges removed. Again, we would expect no less of any other law-abiding corporation. and, of course, registered organisations that contribute positively to the industrial relations framework, as they are meant to do and abide by the law, won't be impacted by this bill. It is simply designed to crack down on those who engage in blatant illegal behaviour. Now, why the Labor Party won't support it, I don't understand. It's a matter for them. I would think that the more sensible and law-abiding unions would be simply begging for the opposition to please, please disassociate themselves with people like Mr Setka and Mr Thompson. Endorse this bill? A bill that is solely directed at cleaning up union corruption and illegal behaviour and thuggery is what can only be described as an endorsement of ongoing illegal behaviour. So we have to ask, is Ms McManus still pulling the strings? Ultimately, it is the Australian taxpayer who bears the brunt, the real cost of Labor's decision here, because union thuggery hampers the delivery of goods and increases the costs of roads, of schools and of hospitals. Mr Setka is far from the only Labor thug. He's just one of the most reprehensible examples we can refer to of union bullying. But this rot runs deep. I want to know how Labor cannot support this bill. It is in their reputational interest to distance themselves as much as they can from people like Mr Setka and the CFMMEU. But the fact is they're not serious about taking on these hardcore, nasty elements in the union movement. Well, Mr Acting Deputy President, if they're not, we are. We will always put Australian people and progress first, and so I commend the Ensuring Integrity Bill.